All right, let's talk about Amazon EC2. You've probably heard the name thrown around, but what is it really? Well, we're going to cut through all the jargon and make this super simple and clear starting right now.
So, let me ask you a question. What if you needed the power of a genuine supercomputer, but only for an hour? Or what if you needed, say, 100 tiny computers, but just for 10 minutes to handle a crazy spike in traffic on your website? How would you even pull that off?
Well, the answer is Amazon EC2. That name stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. And at its heart, it's a service that gives you virtual servers. They call them instances that you can use over the internet. And that first word, elastic, that is the magic word here. It means you can resize them, change them, and scale them however you want.
But you know what? Let's make it even simpler than that. Forget all the cloud speak for a second. The absolute easiest way to get your head around EC2 is to just think of it as a computer that you can rent anytime you want for as long as you need with whatever horsepower you can imagine. This one idea, this is the key to everything.
So that probably brings up a pretty obvious question, right? Why would I rent a computer from the cloud when I could just, buy my own server and stick it in a closet? Turns out there are some really powerful reasons.
The biggest reason? It's all about flexibility. With a rental, you get computing power the second you need it. You can scale way up for a huge event and then scale right back down to save money a few hours later. You don't have that massive upfront cost of buying expensive hardware. You don't have to worry about it breaking down, and you can launch your virtual computer in places all over the globe.
Okay, so we're on board with this whole renting idea. Now for the fun part. Let's actually build our virtual server. You see, it's like renting a car. You don't just get a generic box. You get to pick the model, the engine, and all the cool features.
So first things first, you choose your EC2 instance. This is the virtual machine itself. This is where you decide on the raw power. You get to pick exactly how much CPU you need, how much RAM, what kind of storage, and even how fast its network connection is.
And when I say you have options, I mean the range is just huge. You could pick something really small and cheap, like an instance called a T2.micro, which is perfect for just testing something out. Or you could rent an absolute monster of a machine like a P3.2x large, which is packed with powerful GPUs built specifically for training artificial intelligence models.
So, next up is the software. Once you've got your hardware picked out, you need an operating system. This is where something called an AMI, or Amazon Machine Image, comes into play. Think of it as the master blueprint for your instance.
Choosing your AMI is basically like telling the rental company, hey, I want this computer to come with Linux, or load up Windows on that for me. You can even create your own custom AMIs that have all your software and apps pre-installed and ready to go. Now, obviously, every computer needs a place to store its files. In the world of EC2, that's handled by EBS, which is short for Elastic Block Store. And the most important word there is persistent, which means your data sticks around even if you turn the computer off. So yeah, think of this as your virtual hard drive, plain and simple. You can choose the size, you can choose the speed, just like you would if you were buying a physical one. This is where your operating system, your apps, and all your important data are going to live. Okay, we've got our hardware, our software, and our storage, but it's connected to the internet. How do we protect it? Well, that is the job of a security group. It's basically a virtual firewall that you wrap around every single one of your instances.
I love this analogy. Think of your security group like a bouncer at a nightclub. By default, it lets absolutely no one in. You have to give it a specific guest list, a set of rules. For example, you might tell it, hey, anyone who wants to see my website is allowed to come in through port 80. It's how you get precise control over who can talk to your computer.
So we've built our perfect rental computer. Awesome. Now, how do we actually pay for it? Well, just like a car rental, there's not just one price. There are different plans for different situations.
Let's look at the two most common options. First, you've got on-demand. It's exactly what it sounds like. You pay by the second for what you use, and there's zero commitment. It's perfect when you don't know how much you'll need. Then, you have spot instances. Here, you're bidding on Amazon's spare computing power. It is incredibly cheap, but there's one catch. AWS can take it back if they need it with just a 2-minute warning.
And when I say incredibly cheap, I am not kidding. By using spot instances for jobs that can be interrupted, things like processing a giant batch of data, you can save up to 90% compared to the on-demand price. That is a massive, massive discount.
And of course, for folks who know they need a computer running around the clock for a long time, there are options like reserved instances. This is a lot like signing a 1- or 3-year lease on an apartment.
You commit to using it, and in return, you get a really nice discount.
Okay, theory is great, but let's see how this stuff actually works. How are people really using these virtual rental computers out in the wild?
Well, one of the most common things people do is host a website, and it's way more straightforward than you might think. You launch a small instance, install some web server software, you tell your security group bouncer to let web traffic in on port 80, and you drop your website files on it, and that's it, you're live on the internet. But it goes so much further than that. Remember that GPU monster we talked about? You can rent that for a few hours to train an AI model and then just shut it down so you stop paying. Or you could launch a whole army of cheap spot instances to chew through massive video files. And of course, EC2 is running silently in the background, powering the backend code for countless apps you use every single day.
All right, to bring this all home, it's really important to understand that EC2 is just one tool in a giant AWS toolbox. And knowing when to use it and when to maybe use something else is super important.
The superpower of EC2 is that it gives you full and total control over your virtual server. But that's not always what you need. If you just want to run some code without ever thinking about a server, you'd use something called Lambda. If you're all about containers, you'd use ECS or EKS. EC2 is that foundational building block you reach for when you need ultimate control over the machine.
So there you have it, Amazon EC2. It's really just a computer for rent. It's this flexible, scalable, and incredibly powerful resource that you can mold to do just about anything. It's the engine that powers a huge chunk of the modern internet. Which really only leaves one final thought. Now that you know what it can do, if you could build anything with it, what would you power?